Alright, it's time. I have been waiting to share this with you for a while, and I cannot wait to show you this beautiful transformation we did, budget friendly, on the powder room, the green powder room. Oh, I have hated this room forever. So my sister and her husband, they moved into this house years ago, and there was like every color of the rainbow painted on these walls, and they've slowly been painting them, and finally she said she was ready to get rid of the green powder room, which, by the way, is the main guest bathroom and also the bathroom for her clients for her home office. So thought it was about time. Hey, I'm Janelle. This is toDIYfor. So if you're new to my channel, I do new DIYs every single Wednesday. A lot of times they are smaller DIY projects, but I love to do a good makeover space, and this one's gonna be a two-parter. So make sure you subscribe so that you see the completed project next week, which includes the most incredible accent wall. I just love everything about it. This whole space is so moody and I love it. So there will be some sneak peeks on kind of what's happening in the space this week, but we're going to mainly focus on the vanity. So we are working on a budget here for the entire project. We did have a few expensive items, including the faucet, which made a really big difference in the space. But not including that faucet, this makeover for the vanity was like, I don't know, less than $40, $50. It wasn't a lot of money, and it really had a huge impact. We do kind of like a new countertop, we painted out with some new hardware. It's just a lengthy process, which did take a couple of days due to dry time. But I can't wait to share with you the first part of this powder room transformation. So make sure you subscribe and tune in to next week's full makeover. Let's get into it. All right, so here again is the space that we're going to be working with, the dreaded green bathroom. But today we're mostly going to be focusing on this countertop and the vanity. So we're going to give it a whole new refreshed look. As you can see, it is very dated, but it's going to look great when we're done with it. So the first thing that I did was obviously clean out the space, but then I got to removing some of this caulking from the countertop, attaching it to the wall. This is mostly just prep for the entire project. I then went ahead and I removed the handles here. We're going to be replacing the hardware, but we're also painting the vanity. So go ahead and rip off those doors as well. They're a lot easier to paint once you've removed them. So I did that, and then basically, like I said, this is all just to prep the space. There's a lot of sanding involved in this project. So hopefully you have an electric sander, and make sure you wear a mask. I should have been wearing one, but yes, I sanded down the entire vanity, and then we also sanded down the countertop because we're going to be resurfacing this as well. We want to make it nice and rough so that that new concrete will actually hold and stick to the surface. So I had to go in and do quite a bit of hand sanding as well because my sander didn't fit around some of these small, crevices and whatnot. But I cleaned everything up with a vacuum, wiped it down, and now our surfaces are ready and prepped for their new finishings. So I decided to paint this first. We're going to go in with a coat of primer before we paint the vanity. And there's just like a lot of different layers and dry time for everything. So I opted to start with this, and then I did the concrete countertops, the first coat at least. So this is the product I'm using, Speed Finish. It's normally used for patching concrete cracks. It is the finest powder, and that's really what you want to find. You want to find a product that has a really, really fine powder, because that way it's going to be a very smooth finish. So when I mix this together, I did very small portions. I found the product specifically that I was using really dried out quite quickly, so I worked in small batches and basically just covered this the best I could and tried to smooth everything out the best I could. They're very, very thin layers, like we're talking millimeters thick, and we're going to put down our first coat and allow it to dry overnight. While that was drying, I moved back over here to these doors, giving them a good sand down and prepping them for some paint. And then I went ahead and primed these as well. I always prop things up on old soup cans. It just makes it a lot easier when you're painting. Also with this, I filled in one of the holes from the previous hardware because the new hardware we have has different holes. We're going to keep the one of the same holes. So I filled that in and primed those. So this is the following day. I allowed everything to dry overnight. We're going to go in here and sand everything down. This is very, very messy. Make sure you are wearing a mask. It's crazy dusty. But sand everything down the best you can, and then we're going to lay on another thin coat of the concrete. This time I made it a little bit more runny. I found it where I was able to work with it a little bit better. So to make these concrete countertops, I actually watched a really great YouTube video on how to do this from Modern Builds. Now, we did end up using some slightly different products, but he's got an incredible YouTube tutorial on how to do these skim coat countertops, and I will leave that linked down below for you if you want to check it out. So I just want to tell you to be prepared for, just this to take a very long time. Because there is a sink, because there's these weird kind of rounded corners, it takes a lot longer to smooth out this stuff. If this was just a plain flat surface for maybe just a concrete countertop you wanted to have outdoors with nothing on it, this would actually be a really simple and quick process. But it does take a long time to work around all those little edges. So I had originally taped this off when I did my first coat. I then decided to remove this tape from the wall because I didn't want it to get cemented into the wall. So after the second coat was on and while it was still wet, I slowly removed that tape. And I'll show you how I kind of finished everything off with the third coat. So again, allowing that to dry, we are back to doing another part of this project, and I'm going to paint out the drawers with the brush first and then go in with the roller. That is the best way to get a very smooth finish if you are painting cabinet doors. And this is kind of giving you an idea of the look that we're going with for this bathroom. This is the color that we're using on the walls. So the vanity is kind of going to just almost go invisible into the wall, which is kind of what we wanted. So I didn't get it on camera, but I also painted the vanity inside the bathroom, the part that's still attached to the wall as well. And this is kind of what it's looking like. As you can kind of see, the walls are painted too, but that is more for next week's full reveal video. So this is what it looks like after 2 coats of concrete. Really, really starting to like the look of these tones together, but we are going to need to do 1 more coat of the concrete on here because they are so thin. So as you can see, it's a little rough in some spots, but that's mostly just because it's very difficult to work in those small corners. This edge here that I'm working on, it was so simple and quick to, do this coat and this layer here. By the end of it, I was a pro at getting that smooth and laying it in. But the other parts are where I struggled and I had a hard time getting everything smooth. So what I did end up resorting to was just going in with my fingers and trying to smooth it out as best I could. That's kind of all I could really do back in behind the faucet where the sink kind of connects with that piece. So we made it as smooth as possible. It's just, you make it work. My sister was happy with the final product, so was I. But I actually took a little bit of concrete and I kind of wedged it in between the wall and the countertop instead of doing the caulking there. It kind of created a very nice seal. So this is our third and final coat, just trying to make everything clean and as smooth as possible. You'll save yourself some time in the sanding option. And anything that you kind of get on the sink or say on the walls like I am here, you can easily wipe that off with a damp cloth, as long as you do it shortly after you've put the concrete on. So as long as it's still a little bit damp, it's really easy to wipe off and clean up those spaces. So that's exactly what I did on the walls and on the sink as well. So to finally finish this off, we're going to give it some new hardware. We went with the long poles, and I made this little template with some cardboard, so I knew where the holes needed to be. We're going to repurpose that first hole. I drilled in a new hole in the bottom and screwed in this hardware, got the doors back on here, and the final step is to give this top coat a major sand once it had dried. This is a lot of work because my electric sander did not fit in a lot of those crevices. So it was a lot of hand sanding, and I honestly did not get it as smooth as I had hoped I would, but my sister said she was fine with it, so was I. But give it as good of a sand as you can. And then to finish this all off, I topped it with some very good polyurethane, like stuff that's good for the floors. The first coat will really soak into it, but then the second and third coat is where you start to get your layers of protection from all of the wear and tear, and of course from water splashing up on the sink. Now, we did this a few months ago, and my sister says that it is still holding up really well. And that is the first part of our makeover. So I will also add, her husband changed out the faucet. We went with black fixtures. It really helps update this dated sink, and I think this just looks phenomenal. I can't believe that we were able to make this transformation in a couple of days and for not a lot of money either. Let me know what you thought of this revamp of this countertop, and please don't forget to subscribe. Next week, I promise you, the full makeover is coming and it is epic.